My name's Rich Keevy. I'm the director of the Policy Research Institute for the region at the Woodrow Wilson School. And on behalf of Princeton University, I welcome you here to our all-day conference on campus safety in the focus, advances and ongoing challenges 1 year later. Over the past several months, Policy Research Institute has explored such topics as eminent domain, school funding, affordable housing, regional economic development. But today we examine a unique and incredibly relevant subject, campus safety. Unfortunately, this symposium emerges directly from an unconscionable misfortune. As the title suggests, the 1 year anniversary of the incident at Virginia Tech figures prominently today in our proceedings. And the more recent occurrence at Northern Illinois sadly reminds us that the matter should never escape our consciousness. The poet Tennyson wrote, "Oh, yet we trust, and somehow good will be the final goal of ill." Hopefully, what we discuss today can draw some good from the ill that befell the communities at Virginia Tech and Northern Illinois. In the world of public policy, often, not until a calamity arises, do some issues receive the necessary attention. For many, this holds true with respect to campus security. For the experts we have gathered today, it most certainly does not, as they have devoted their professional lives to asking questions, studying problems, testing scenarios, and posing solutions for the purpose of maintaining a safe and secure campus environment. As most of you understand, campus safety stretches across a complex terrain involving elements of psychology, risk analysis, civil rights, emergency response, and investigation, just to name a few. So in partnership with our co-sponsor, the International Association of Campus Law Enforcement Administrators, IACLEA for short, and the campus security folks here at Princeton University, we have worked to design a program that acknowledges the complexity of this issue. We begin with a discussion of IACLEA's report entitled A Blueprint for Safer Campuses, which is being released today, and then continues with panels on threat assessment, liability, and regional impact. As our lunch speaker, we have the privilege of hearing from Princeton University's Catherine Newman, internationally renowned for her analysis of violence in schools. But before we move on with our program, I want to take this opportunity to introduce to you the Honorable Rush Holt. Congressman Holt is our representative here from the 12th District, and the Congressman has been a great supporter of our program here at Pryor and has a very keen interest in security issues. So join with me to welcome Congressman Holt.
Good morning. I'm Rush Holt. I represent, you for the next 8 hours as your congressman. And, of course, some of you are from this area, and I'm pleased to represent you. But I'm here to not only to welcome you to the 12th Congressional District in New Jersey, but to thank you, to thank Princeton, the Woodrow Wilson School, and IACLEA for putting this program together. I sit on the Committee on Education and Labor in the House of Representatives. We've held hearings on the subject. In fact, Steve, I guess when he was president of IACLEA, testified at that time. We've followed the activity over the years. As you know, the Department of Justice had a summit 4 or 5 years ago on campus law enforcement. I very much, however, like the design of this conference on campus safety and focus. I think it will do a lot. In fact, I hope it will render some of what we are doing unnecessary. The Committee on Education and Labor is working on the higher education bill, the major legislation that covers student aid and campus administration and so forth around the country. And we are looking at what we should be doing there. Well, certainly here at Princeton, it's a major university with a diverse campus and a diverse student body, more diverse every year, I must say. But they have been spared the headline-making kinds of tragedies. But no campus is immune. No campus is far away. And as we've seen, it's not just institutions of higher education, but secondary schools as well that must pay attention to the campus safety, the threats that can come from places that most of us would least expect it. Of course, you are in the business of expecting those things. And you tell us what will work and what won't. Many of us feel that a part of the solution is to provide better control of weapons. The International Association of Chiefs of Police has told us that common sense gun control can help. We believe New Jersey's safety record is traceable in part to our gun safety legislation, which is, some might say, among the strongest in the nation, but I would point out it's been with us for years, and everyone has, I think, lives with it comfortably. Law enforcement personnel, hunters, hobbyists, and the citizens. So we're working to make, for example, gun trace data more available and more useful. And one indication, by the way, that our gun safety legislation here in New Jersey is working is that the large majority of guns that are seized in illegal activity come from out of state, which comes back to my earlier point that it is not inappropriate for the federal government to be involved in matters of safety, including campus safety. The Higher Education Act is in negotiation right now between the House and the Senate. It, as I say, has to do with Pell Grants and student loans and a number of other things. But among the provisions of this bill under consideration will be campus safety provisions, for example, that would direct each institution to provide an annual security report to all students, employees, and the public. That would state current policies concerning security and access, that would describe the type and the frequency of programs designed to inform students, that would include statistics on campus offenses, and information about the procedures for monitoring criminal activity of off-campus student organizations, such as organizations with off-campus housing. Also under discussion would be requirements for reports to the campus community on crimes committed or crimes that are considered to be a threat to students and employees. It would also perhaps, and this is still under discussion, include publicizing best practices. Now, of course, that's where you come in. And that's why I say your conference today and the activities of IACLEA and what you do day in and day out may make this federal action unnecessary, because you are putting into practice on campus after campus around the country best practice. We see it here at the university at Princeton. We see it at Monmouth University, which is in my congressional district, and I think Monmouth is represented here today. We see it in a number of other places. So I commend you for doing this. There clearly are some better practices than what we currently find on campuses that we can implement. And I hope those will come out of today's sessions and will be implemented all across the country. And anything that I can do to help with that, I would like to. So again, I commend the sponsors for doing this. I welcome you to Central New Jersey, and I look forward very eagerly to the output of today's meetings.
And now I want to move on with the forum, and I want to formally thank the IACLEA organization for their expert participation in putting this forum together, and also Steve Healy, who's the Director of Public Safety here at Princeton University. The three of us, if you will, enthusiastically worked on this symposium and the putting together of the panels. And without further ado, let me have the privilege of introducing the president of IACLEA, Ray Thrower. Ray, please.
Good morning, everyone. How are you this morning? Thank you for taking the time from your busy schedules to be with us today. It really means a lot to us. Congressman Holt, thank you for coming this morning. We really do appreciate it. I'd also like to introduce John Pickens, Chief John Pickens from the University of Arizona, who is the University College Section Chair for IACP. John, thank you for taking the time to be here today. It's a privilege to welcome you today on behalf of the 1,200 institutions of higher education and the more than 2,000 individual members that compose the International Association of Campus Law Enforcement Administrators. On behalf of IACLEA, I extend my thanks and gratitude for sponsoring this forum to Richard Keeby, for the Director of Princeton University's Policy Research Institute for the region, better known as PRIOR, and the Woodrow Wilson School of Public and International Affairs, and to our esteemed immediate past president, Stephen Healy, who many of you know as Director of Public Safety for Princeton University. I also want to thank the many distinguished panel members for participating in today's program and the hard work that they put into this. In a few moments, IACLEA will unveil its blueprint for safer campuses. The blueprint is the product of a special task force I appointed shortly after I became president of IACLEA in July of 2007. I assigned this task force the job of reviewing the many governmental and non-governmental studies of campus public safety that were done in the wake of the tragic shootings at Virginia Tech. The task force then identified from these many reports the recommendations we believe are necessary to move campus public safety forward into the future. I want to publicly thank the task force members here today. Stephen Healy, Dolores Stafford, Bill Taylor, Gary Margolis, and Mike Lynch for an outstanding job. Thank you for all the hard work. Without stealing their thunder, I can tell you the blueprint is really a synthesis of the best recommendations made by the brightest minds in the United States who participated in various studies of campus public safety. We believe it provides a clear roadmap to better safety and security for our colleges and universities. Campus public safety leaders have a daunting task to protect the 17 million students, faculty, and staff and visitors to our 4,200 colleges and universities in the U.S. Recent events are a stark reminder of the challenges we face today. We cannot do it alone. Partnerships and collaboration are the key elements to a successful strategy to prevent crime and promote safety and security on our campuses. Efforts to bring together campus safety stakeholders at events like this forum today are a vital part of this strategy. Together, we can make our campuses safer. The stakes are high. Our mission is to protect our greatest assets, the next generation of leaders. I am confident we have the will and resolve to get the job done. I look forward to a day of sharing best practices, model policies, and diverse perspectives on the issues of campus safety. Thank you. At this time, I'd like to invite Stephen Healy, who is the chair of our special task force, to introduce the members of the panel.
Just give us a second here while we transition. Morning again, everyone. Glad to see so many friends and colleagues out this morning. I really appreciate all the support, and I know many of you have traveled very long distances to be with us today. I don't want to echo what Ray said, but thank you for the appreciation extended to the task force members. I also want to acknowledge Mike Lynch, who is in the audience. He's the chief of police at George Mason. Mike, where are you? Mike is one of the committee members and helped us last week when we did the unofficial rollout of the blueprint. And so, Mike, I wanted to acknowledge the work that you did on the task force. And it was very important for us to have someone from Virginia who understood the unique circumstances and the inner workings of the task force. So, Mike, thank you very much for all the work that you've done. I also want to introduce you to Dolores Stafford, who is the chief of police at at the George Washington University.
Thank you.
And also a past president of IACLEA. Thank you for joining us, Dolores. And Gary Margolis, who is the chief of police at the University of Vermont and is the past general chair of the IACP College and University Police Section. Thank you for being here. And as some of you may have seen as we were starting, he got here right on time, so I appreciate that. I think your plane landed
The plane landed just in time for me to get on the road and get
That's right. So if there are any troopers in the room, please forgive his tickets that he received on the way here. And here's a slide that tells you the other members of the task force. And as Ray mentioned, we have been working over the past 8 months to review every report that was developed as a result of the very tragic event at Virginia Tech. And if I can just ask you all just for a second to pause and to remember those who were lost. Thank you. A little bit about the process that we undertook to take on what at first seemed like would be a relatively easy task, because when we began this effort, we had simply the governor's report in Virginia. And I think we did anticipate that many other organizations and states would undertake the process of also reviewing campus safety and security in their states. Little did we know that just about every state would do that. And just as we began to develop what we felt were our definitive recommendations based on the Virginia Tech report, we had to go back because every state was introducing a new report. And so it took us a little longer than we expected to, but we do believe that what you will see today and what you already have as the blueprint are those definitive IACLEA recommendations based on all of the reports that we've reviewed. And I think that there is a section in the blueprint that tells you which reports we have in fact reviewed. There were reports that were released this week from the state of Pennsylvania and also from Illinois, so those have not been obviously included, but we believe that most of the state reports are very consistent in their recommendations, and so we feel very confident that there will be no kind of new or other thoughts that would contribute to or that would affect what our recommendations are. Of course, whenever you work in a task force, any type of group, you're not always going to have 100% consensus on every item, but we have reached general consensus on the 20 recommendations. We feel they're laughing because they obviously have been part of the many heated discussions and debates over some of the issues. But we feel very strongly that if colleges and universities look at these 20 recommendations and do everything that they can do within their unique structure and their unique communities, if they use this as a roadmap and implement these 20 recommendations, safety and security in your community and on your on your campuses will definitely be enhanced. One thing that we realized as we were engaged in the work of reviewing the reports was that every recommendation fell into one of three what we now are considering foundational areas. And those foundational areas are, number one, emergency planning and critical incident response. And these are listed in that order because we believe that these are the priorities that the institution should set in this particular order. So number one, emergency planning and critical incident response. Number two is the campus public safety function. And when we think about the campus public safety function, what we're talking about is ensuring that the agency is appropriately empowered, resourced, and equipped to carry out the mission that the institution expects it to carry out. And finally, we know that there are education and prevention programming that we must all be engaged in, and those are collaborative efforts, not just focused or carried out by the Campus Public Safety Agency, but that are carried out in a collaborative effort with a number of other campus safety stakeholders around the institution. And so these are the foundational areas, and all of the recommendations fit very neatly into one of those particular areas. Now I want to turn it over to Gary Margolis, who is going to address specifically the issues in the first bucket, which is emergency planning and critical incident response. Thank you, Gary.
No, go from here. They're taping it.
Good morning. Contrary to Stephen's intro, I did not speed to get here. I just drove briskly to make sure that I made it on time. The task force spent a considerable amount of time looking at emergency planning and critical incident response, reviewing policies and procedures from a host of institutions, obviously reading the reports that have come out, and settled on 5 or 6 key recommendations. The first is that universities and colleges should conduct threat assessments, institutional threat and vulnerability assessments as part of their risk management strategies and mitigation. And we were, I won't say surprised, but concerned with the number of schools that haven't moved in that direction to understand what's coming at them and where. And we're not necessarily talking about threats of foreign terrorism. We're talking about threats to the campus on an array of issues. And that assessment and the results thereof should help guide and inform the decisions the institution makes around safety and security. The second settled on mass notification systems, and this is obviously a hot topic in the last year. And when the tragedy of Virginia Tech came upon us, and in the weeks afterwards, every company and its cousin became a mass notification expert, and the phones were ringing off the hook. And we realized during that time frame, and as we implemented these systems, that we need to have an array of means and methods to get information out, both the high-tech and the low-tech. So our recommendation is that schools, universities, and colleges implement both the high-tech and low-tech versions of that they should have an array of means, multimodal in nature, to get information out to the community in a timely, accurate, and useful way. The third was encouraging universities through our recommendation to adopt the standards of the National Incident Management System, to follow the NIMS protocols in how the universities and colleges respond to the critical incidents and events that befall them. That was important for a number of reasons, one being the organizational structure and the efficiency that NIMS brings to managing chaotic events and bringing order to chaos. The other is that universities and colleges, no matter where we are located, don't exist separate and aside from the communities in which we live. And those communities are following the National Incident Management System protocols in order to respond to critically unfolding events. The fourth was something that we felt, again, important to state as a recommendation in the form of emergency response and recovery plans. These plans need to be succinct and clear and avoid complexity and obfuscation. This was important because as we surveyed plans from around the country and as the committee members in their own experiences have worked with plans at various institutions, we've seen a dizzying array of depth to these plans. And what we settled in on was a 345-page emergency response and recovery plan. While it may look good on a desk, bound and hardcovered, isn't going to be read by anyone in a rapidly unfolding circumstance. So we believe that we needed to get our plans lean and mean, get them down to that information which tells us what are the levels of the emergency, who's responsible for what, and then fill in the appendices with appropriate incident action plans where necessary to address the circumstances coming at you. The fifth was mutual aid. Again, universities and colleges, whether we have sworn public safety or security professionals at our campuses, need to have mutual aid agreements with surrounding communities, because it's those communities that we rely on, and not just those communities, but other universities and colleges. And for many of our institutions, we're not that far from other institutions. And when something bad happens, we recognize that the people who are most likely to be able to help us quick enough in the dizzying array of unfolding events that we can face at a campus are other universities. And again, when we surveyed the population, so to speak, and began to look at what agreements existed between universities and colleges, between each other, and between the communities as such, we found a wide discrepancy. So our recommendation on that is that model policies, mutual aid agreements be in place. And the last but not least, and the one that Dolores and I and Stephen giggled about a little bit, and some of our colleagues that are here that worked on this with us, was the discussion we had around training our public safety officers to be EMS first responders. Whatever that level and degree looks like, the recommendation that we settled on after much excellent debate and stimulating intellectual debate, I will add, I have to plug that in there, so is that we believe that our first responders, our public safety officers, sworn, non-sworn, our public safety officers should have a significant level of EMS first responder training. What that looks like in our jurisdictions may vary. It may be, for some of us, they become EMTs and get that level of training. For others, it may be first responders. But it be more than basic first aid and CPR.
And I will tell you, and Dolores will back this up, that I had an opportunity to hear a presentation from two of the members of the Northern Illinois University Police Department. And although this report and this blueprint did not take into full account or recognition of that event, because there have been no formal reports that have been released to the public as of yet, I will tell you that that Chief Don Grady and his staff feel very strongly about this issue. They believe that because all of their officers are EMTs, they were able to save lives on 214. And the reason was because they were still in a hot zone. And the local EMS, the local EMTs, would not come into that hot zone until they were absolutely 100% assured that the area had been rendered safe. Because Northern Illinois has trained EMTs. All of their police officers are trained EMTs. They were able to render life-saving emergency medical care.
All right, so I'm going to talk about empowering and resourcing the campus public safety function. I guess first and foremost, the campus public safety executive must report directly to a senior operations officer and be part of the emergency operations team responsible for developing emergency response and recovery plans. One of the other things I want to talk about specifically, there's a few things up on the slide. I'm not going to go over every one of them, but another one that I think is important is the nature of the emergency should direct what and how the campus authorities communicate with the campus and under what time frame. Universities and colleges are required to comply with the IACLEA Act, which requires timely public warnings of imminent danger. What I've found in my travels around the country as one of the nationally recognized experts on the IACLEA Act is that most colleges have a policy statement in their compliance brochure, but they do not actually have an operating policy. And that's where I think institutions really need to look at what is your operating policy. You need to look at developing an individual definition of timely in relation to the available technology, the available communication systems, and the nature of the crisis. We all know that there is legislation pending in Congress with what is being called the 30-minute rule. As you saw in the Chronicle last week, I was quoted as being against the 30-minute rule. I am, in fact, against it. I will tell you that in my conversations with the chief at Delaware State University, after the shooting there, we talked, and it took them 68 minutes to communicate with the community, and by all accounts, they were viewed as having done everything pretty well in that situation. So, my feeling on this matter is that police response has to be the first priority. Communicating with campus constituents is certainly a close second, but police response has to be the first priority. People don't seem to understand that 70% of the time our campuses have limited administrative staff on site. For many of us, the campus police and public safety department officials are the only officials on campus who are operating on a 24-hour basis. So communicating with the campus is certainly important, and I'm not trying to take anything away from that. I do not think there should be a hard and fast rule with regard to 30 minutes. Each state should certainly pass enabling legislation that allows their colleges and universities the choice to employ a sworn police agency in lieu of or in addition to non-sworn security professionals. Another thing that I feel very strongly about is accreditation. IACLEA currently has an accreditation program. There is obviously IACLEA has an accreditation program. IACLEA is actually using IACLEA standards for some of their accreditation program. We have also, through IACLEA, developed some campus-specific standards. And I believe it's important for all campus public safety agencies, sworn or non-sworn, and non-sworn, to go through the accreditation process. The IACLEA program now allows for that. For those agencies in the room that are CALEA accredited, IACLEA now has a comparative compliance program where institutions simply have to comply with the IACLEA standards, and then they can become IACLEA accredited as well as CALEA accredited. So accreditation, I think it is so important for agencies to meet the standards that have been developed, these standards of excellence, quite frankly. So I think that's an important recommendation in this document. If an institution employs a sworn, full-service sworn law enforcement agencies, then officers should have access to a range of use of force options, including firearms and less than lethal impact weapons. In short, we have said in this report that sworn officers should be armed. I believe we all feel very strongly that that is the case. Campus public safety personnel who are provided any defensive weapon should be trained to the standards required for the public sector law enforcement personnel. And certainly, institutions should have clear policy statements implementing the use of all of the weapons that they are authorizing for their departments. And lastly, we need to hire the right people and provide the right training. The complex nature of law enforcement demands knowledge, skills, training, and experience. Officers who have not demonstrated the ability to use good judgment and make good decisions should not be assigned to functions which may require them to question, detain, or restrain the movements of citizens.
Finally, I'm going to close this rollout of the blueprint. And one of the things that we hope to do with this official unveiling of the blueprint is to set the stage for the presentations that you're going to hear for the rest of the day. And some of the points that we're going to cover in this particular bucket, this prevention and education programming, is a lead-in to our next presentation. And so I'm not going to speak a lot about behavioral threat assessment because we have two of the nation's leading experts on behavioral threat assessment who are going to talk about that. But they've been educating me extensively over the past couple of weeks, so I do want to just speak very briefly to what we mean when we talk about behavioral threat assessment. We know, and again, the experts will talk about this, we know that in about 95% of every school shooting, be that in K-12 or in the higher ed setting, that there were indications that were visible to people that were involved in the life of the shooter. We know that. That is undisputable. The problem becomes, how do we get that information? And so this recommendation around behavioral threat assessment is a recommendation to really do three things. Number one, to ensure that you have a behavioral threat assessment process at your institution. And that means that you have a collaborative, multidisciplinary team that comes together on a regular basis to evaluate those behaviors or threats that may be carried out by members of the community. And we are not just talking about students, we're talking across the spectrum, the entire campus community. Number two, so now you have this team, and number two, you have a process that allows community members to bring to the team's attention behaviors or situations that are troubling. And finally, number three, that this team is able and trained to assess these threats and then put in place an action plan or a management team to, or a management plan to appropriately deal with the situation. And again, I won't go much further into that because the experts later will talk about that. Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Just one thing that the committee, the task force looked at around this, which is, I think, important to note, and I'm going to look at my good friend Mike Lynch for having inspired this thought the last time we gave this presentation, and that is that there are a lot of restriction points in information flow around behavioral threat issues. You can have the team, but you have to sensitize the population as to what they need to share with you, and our experts are going to clearly talk about that. We just want to recognize there are limits, and we're calling we've coined the phrase the Minority Report syndrome. If you remember the Steven Spielberg movie where they were able to foresee crime down the road and get it before it happened and that whole thing, there are limits to what we can do. We can do the best we can do, and we can put the systems in place, but we don't want to give the false expectations that we believe we can always catch everything coming at us, and there has to be some balance and some equilibrium to that, and I know that our colleagues are going to speak to that.
And finally, from the three foundational areas, the last area I want to address is that of faculty, staff, and student training. And I think you all know this, and this is intuitive. You can have the best emergency management plan. Gary talked about what those plans should look like. You can have the absolute best. You can have the absolute best training for your campus public safety agency. But if you have not found a useful and substantive way to ensure that the community is trained on a regular basis, and some of the pending legislation addresses that issue. If you don't have those things in place, then everything else that you've done is for naught, because your community needs to know what to do in a critically unfolding event. And that's why, again, it's so important for us to be very clear about our objection to the 30-minute rule, because when we have critically unfolding events and we are trying to send notices and messages to the community, we absolutely want to make sure that those messages are succinct, that they're accurate, obviously that they're timely, whatever that is in that particular situation, but also that they're useful. And what we mean by useful is that those messages tell the community what we want what we want them or need them to do in order to protect themselves or to protect other members of the community. One way that you can facilitate that message is by ensuring that you've trained the community, and there are a number of ways that we should be training the community and notifying them and orienting them to what we expect them to do in an emergency situation. Finally, and I did this presentation in Oklahoma, and many of you all know Oklahoma has defeated twice now bills that are calling for the right to carry for community members on campuses. We feel very strongly about this, and we're absolutely unanimous and 100% agreement. And I know not everyone, there are probably people in this room that may not agree with our position on that, and so we can respectfully agree to disagree. We do not support concealed carry for community members on our campuses. We obviously believe that people who are duly sworn and who are authorized and are trained to carry out an official capacity should carry firearms, and in some cases those may be concealed. But we believe that there are three places where folks shouldn't be allowed to carry guns. Number one is in church. Number two are in our schools. And as I learned in Oklahoma this past week, saloons. Of course, I've never, I hadn't thought about that, but obviously that's a concern in Oklahoma. So we feel very strongly that this is something that and we have all been quoted publicly as being against that. And we will continue to work with the states to defeat any legislation that encourages this right.
And while on the topic of the weapons, while the group recommended to the IACLEA board, which then adopted these, the issue around concealed carry of the implication is firearms, there was discussion, and remains to be discussion and some agreement on weapons in general, or likely facsimiles thereof. Tasers are showing up on campuses, guns that are toys that look like guns that are supposed to give the impression of being armed. All of these things are showing up. They provide the same concern for us, and when we indicated concealed carry of weapons, we were broad enough to be able to leave it as weapons and not firearms, so you could interpret it the way it needed to be interpreted down there.
And we had lots of discussion about this, as you can probably imagine, and we couldn't think of any scenario in which allowing students, staff, faculty to carry firearms would make our campuses safer. Obviously, there's no research to suggest that that's true, but as trained professionals, as we thought about the scenarios that could potentially play out if this were to come to pass, we couldn't think of any good endings, and so we were lockstep, 100% in agreement that this was not a good idea. As we conclude, I think it is appropriate for us to acknowledge that the unbelievable working relationship, the existing very strong relationship that existed between the Virginia Tech Police, the Blacksburg Police, and the State Police in Virginia, obviously saved many, many lives on 416. We have no doubt, and for those of you who haven't had an opportunity to hear a briefing from Chief Wendell Flincham and Steve Flaherty, the Superintendent Colonel of the State Police, you really need to avail yourself. And of course, this is a shameless plug. You'll have an opportunity to hear them at the IACLEA annual conference in Hartford coming up in June. So if you haven't registered, you want to do that as soon as you get an opportunity to do. But we want to recognize that their working relationship, the fact that they had trained an active shooter, the fact that the campus police were a fully equipped and internationally accredited police agency led to them being able to save additional lives. And we want to publicly acknowledge their professionalism in their work. And we're going to transition very quickly into the next panel because this is going to be a very exciting group. And where's John Collegian? John, if I can invite you up to introduce your panel. Thank you very much for your attention.